It is lucky week number 7 here in high school football in the state of Indiana with Inside the Zone, Justin Kinney of Ops on Glenmarini, and 2/3 of the way already in the books for the regular season. Whew. And we've got a lot of conference. I know. We don't. Bishop Dwenger has been, the dominant team in the area. Angola has been dominant in a certain respect, but it feels like every conference race is still wide open, whereas in some years, you kind of already know it's between one, maybe 2 teams at this point. This year's been wide open.
It's been crazy. We still have plenty of questions to answer in the SAC, although Dwenger obviously in a commanding position, up 2 games, at least 2 games on everybody else with 3 games to play. Northeast 8, as soon as we thought we have it figured out, something happens with Columbia City knocking off New Haven last week. Mm-hmm. And then ACAC, okay, we have Adams Central there atop, but with Woodland still on the schedule, could the Warriors be a threat to the Flying Jets? So intrigue everywhere. Yeah,
Warriors are going to be battle-tested for sure by the time they take on Adams Central. We'll talk about that in a second, but let's start with the SAC. The Battle of the Bishops, kind of the premier game, I would guess, this week in the SAC. Bishop Dwenger trying to stay undefeated. Luers can put up some points, we've seen, has struggled a little bit defensively.
Yeah.
What do you see as the key for Bishop Luers? They've been able to pull out late wins, as they did against Northrop last week, 45-43, but if you're Kyle Lindsay, you're not happy that the other team has 43 points at the end of the game.
Yeah, it was 4 straight games for Bishop Luers decided by 3 points or less, and they're 3-1 in those games. Of course, the one loss was to Northside, 52-49. Mm-hmm. We're waiting for that week where the Bishop Dwenger offense has to win a game for them, because that defense at some point is going to allow a team to get into the 20s in points. Yeah, we're still kind of waiting for that to happen. Is this the week? With the way Bishop Luers can put up points, Norman Kanapke throwing for over 1,600 yards in the year, Jordan Presley averaging over 200 all-purpose yards a game. They look good on paper, but they haven't faced a defense quite like Dwenger.
As far as Dwenger goes, they haven't had their starting quarterback. Brendan Lytle has been playing. He's been playing well. But if you're Bishop Dwenger, is this a game where if it gets in a shootout, you really need all your weapons? Because when you take a look at what Luers has, you mentioned a couple of the key guys, they have players that can put up the points.
That's the question for me for Bishop Dwenger the remainder of the year and into the 4A playoffs is if a team is able to figure that defense out, and maybe it has an off night, maybe it has a couple defensive touchdowns, whatever happens, if Dwenger has to play from behind or match a team score for score, are they capable of doing that offensively? I think Brendan Lytle slowly but surely is looking more and more comfortable in his role, throwing it downfield a little bit more last Friday than what we saw the week before. We don't know what Patrick O'Keefe's status is going forward. But if Lytle is the answer, if that is the long-term guy there for the rest of the season, I think he's capable of doing that. We just haven't had to see Dwenger win a game like that yet.
Carroll and Homestead, historically, these are offensive shootouts from
sure
what we've seen.
Yes.
How do you see this one playing out? Because obviously these teams aren't necessarily in the mix for the SEC title now, but if you're Carroll, you never want to lose to Homestead. If you're Homestead, you never want to lose to Carroll.
Yeah, rivalry's great, and this is one of the big ones, obviously, in the SAC. So you look at a Homestead team that, it's traditional Homestead, right? You look at their quarterback, whether it be Luke Goody, Jake Archibald, they're throwing the ball over the field. Running the ball, still questions there. And their leading rusher has 325 yards on the season, and their second leading rusher is a quarterback. So one-dimensional. Can you be that team that wins a fair amount of games being one-dimensional? Homestead usually is most years. But in this conference, in this league, this year, can be a little bit more difficult.
And I'm intrigued to see Carroll's offense against the Homestead defense. Cam Shannon out there, one of the better defensive backs in the area.
Yeah.
I would imagine you match him up against Camden Childers, who I haven't seen the stats updated since last week, but he was number 2 in the state in receiving yards. Had 2 receiving touchdowns early last week in a win against Southside. That's an intriguing matchup to me, that Carroll offense, Gavin Vogt, all Rhett Saylor, all the weapons they have against the Homestead defense that, Cam Rogers, those guys, maybe a little bit underrated.
Yeah, I would agree. And Gavin Vogt's had a tremendous year. Camden Childers, as you mentioned, has been tremendous as well. Yeah, this is another one of those games that, is at first to 50. We've been saying that so much this year in the SAC and maybe that's why Dwenger is at the top of the perch that they're at, because defensively, nobody is their equal in the conference. It's just a lot of teams that put up a lot of points. And Dwenger is that one team that can limit all the offenses they have faced so far. So that could be the leading thing for Dwenger right now.
Speaking of offensives, heading into last week, Northrop was the leading offense in terms of points scored per game in this conference. They play Snider, and this feels like, in years past, it feels like Northrop really didn't have a shot.
Yeah.
They'd hang with them for a quarter, maybe a quarter and a half, maybe 2 quarters, but then Snider would dominate. If any time in the last decade they're poised to be upset, the Snider Panthers are, I would think this would be it, not based on necessarily what they've done, but what Northrop presents as well.
This feels like the best chance Northrop has had to beat Snider in a good decade, really, because of what you mentioned. They're able to put up a lot of points. Defense can make enough plays to a limited team on a possession or two, which is all that offense needs. And Snider's offense just isn't as high-powered as we're used to seeing it. Last week when they got down 21-7, it felt like the game was over because we have not been able to see Snider against a reasonably good defense consistently move the ball down the field. So Northrop, I think the opportunity is there. And looking even bigger picture in that sectional, that 4-team sectional, looks as interesting as it has in a long time. Because since Snider moved to 6A, and even when they were in 5A, it was just pencil in the Panthers for the regional. You can make a case for any of those 4 teams to win 2 games, Carroll, Homestead, Northrop, Snider, and win a sectional title.
Very true, very true. A totem pole game, you got Southside at Northside. Northside will go in, I would think, favored to win that one. And then Wayne at Concordia. Wayne trying to continue their quest for an SAC championship. Definitely need a win at a dangerous Concordia team.
And it's those 2 teams that don't have a natural rival, so they have to match up in rivalry.
Yeah, you look
right?
at the lineup, you're like, yeah, and you're like, Wayne Concordia.
Like, I guess they were the 2 leftovers.
All right, that's all we got.
Let's build a rivalry here. But yeah, do we have a potential letdown for Wayne after the emotional win? Being recognized. I think all the doubters that are remainders for Wayne are just haters at this point. So they prove it once again last week. Where are they at mentally going in a game that if they're not ready to play, Concordia can hang tough?
I was intrigued last week after the win. Derek Moore, he said everybody picked Snider? Did you pick Snider?
I did pick Snider by 7.
Oh, never mind then.
And I am everybody. So
yes, I am every woman. It's always me.
I don't think it was. I needed to see it.
Yeah.
Straight up, I needed to see it from Wayne, and we've seen it earlier in the year. But until you beat Snider, that's really the okay, you've arrived kind of thing, right? I mean, it's kind of the Alabama SEC-ish kind of thing. Alabama could have a down year, but you need to beat them for me to really look at you and say, wow, you're pretty darn good. So,
as Ric Flair said, to be the man, you've got to beat the man.
Absolutely. Now, they've done it.
They beat the man.
And they can't have a letdown. And they have Homestead next week, and they have Carroll, too. So 2 teams that can put up a lot of points. So Wayne has a great shot at going 8-1 in the regular season, but they have some hurdles to get over
That's
first.
a beefy back end of the schedule for Wayne.
Absolutely.